Hello, everyone. My name's Benjamin, and I'm a Nevada County Democrat. It's my privilege today to speak with Elizabeth Betencourt, who is running to represent our first district in the California Assembly. Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much, Benjamin. I appreciate the opportunity.
We're glad to have you. Like I said, you're running for the state assembly. Just give us kind of a broad overview of what that means. Not everybody might be familiar with the structure of the state government or what it does for people in our district.
That's a great way to start out. Yeah, many people are more familiar with the federal government, but actually it's our state government that affects us day to day with much greater emphasis. So our state government is similar to the federal government in that it, of course, has three branches: the administrative or executive, and the legal branch, our attorney general, and then, of course, the legislative branch. And there are two houses in our legislative branch. One is our state senate, and those districts are much larger, representing a larger swath of people than the state assembly districts, which generally represent fewer people, so it's viewed more as a house of the people. And those elections happen every 2 years, as opposed to the state senate terms.
So given all that, our district is pretty non-standard compared to the rest of California. We're very different from a lot of the other districts in California. So tell us what you see as the sort of general long-term challenges that are facing our district in particular, and what will you do in the assembly once you're elected to address these challenges and to help us build opportunity for people here in the district?
So every elected official probably thinks that their district is special and unique. There are 80 assembly districts in our state, and of course, every single one is special and unique. Assembly District 1, though, is the largest in the state. That absolutely sets us apart, and we have the most rural space of any district in the state. And so we are unique in the way that there's a lot of ground to cover, and we're incredibly diverse. We run from, the very almost urban center of Redding, and I would say Truckee as well, to incredibly unique, like 5 people per square mile up in Modoc County. There are vast expanses where you will not see much more than jackrabbits and maybe a few antelope and maybe some cattle. So the district has a lot of diverse needs. And one of the things that I am running on is the need for increased investment in our district. We've gone nearly 40 years really without representation that brings us resources. So investment into our power structure, like PG&E, like our local power providers, investment into our water resources. Our local water providers have done some of that with our dollars, our local dollars, but by and large, the state has not invested in our water resources up here, despite their desire to bring more of our water resources south. So I'm running on that basis that it's going to take somebody from California's supermajority party to make the case for investing in a district that otherwise doesn't have a strong voice in the assembly.
So that actually brings up a question I've got as well. A lot of people in our area, especially in our Nevada County Democrats, are environmentalists. And, but at the same time, we all want jobs, opportunity, develop. And just like you mentioned, the resources of this district help the rest of California. So what can we do to kind of bring those two sides of environmentalism and economic growth, economic development, and opportunity together for people here in the district? How can the assembly help us with that?
That's such a great question, and it's important because it's on everyone's mind while we're in the midst of a recession. Some people are calling it a depression. So we need to be thinking about multiple wins per dollar. So what I'm looking at is the resources we have. We have people resources, we have forest resources, we have water resources. What can we do? What can we provide the state and ask for investment in return? Our state is a leader in climate change. And one of the things that we have a lot of is carbon material in our forests and our fields. So how can we increase investment into our renewable energy in the form of biomass energy provision to the whole state of California, decrease our fire risk, increase resilience in our national forests and beyond, and private forests as well, and provide this really minimal carbon output fuel for the state of California to help in meeting our climate goals. That would employ people at all levels of the educational and professional ladder, and would provide for employment in places that otherwise are pretty remote. Like I mentioned, we have spaces in this district with, 5 to 10 people per square mile. It's hard to find employment in rural California. So increasing investment into things like biomass energy provision, like small scale agriculture, like renewable water resources strategies, all of those things will increase employment for our district, as well as increase California's resilience for the future.
Mute again. So as I understand what you're saying is that if we have strong investment from a green energy oriented state coming into our district in order to be able to build green industries and manage resources, natural resources, responsibly, you would see that as a way to drive economic growth. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great paraphrase. I think the way that we've seen our resources here in Northern California used in the last, several hundred years is that it's take, and there's no giving back, right? We benefit now from hundreds of years of scientific investigation, as well as an integration of indigenous knowledge. We are creating more spaces. We should do more, but creating more spaces for Native people to come back to the land. All of those things that we're doing will help us to balance our footprint, to be light on the land, but still increase our investment and the return to our communities here in 81.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you. Just on a side note, have you ever heard of or read an essayist named Wendell Berry?
Yes.
Essayist and poet?
Yes, we have right behind
I thought maybe.
Most of those books are Wendell Berry. Yes.
I love it. Yeah, that's a big name in my family's household library as well.
Cool, Ben.
Reading that
That's
stuff,
awesome.
and I hear the echoes there of a lot of the ideas that I also love and believe in. All right, well, let's switch gears a little bit to something a little bit heavier than Wendell Berry, maybe. Right now, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of Americans have taken to the streets to protest systemic racism and police brutality. What can we here in the First District, do to make positive change on these issues at home, here in our local area? How can we, there may be some people who don't believe that these problems are real, but those of us who do, what can we do to make a difference, and what can we do to build something positive now that these issues are finally getting the traction and the attention that they've deserved for so long and missed out on?
Absolutely. I think many of us are experiencing what we didn't even know was an existing wound reopening in this process. And it is incredibly painful to see. But it also comes with a pretty invigorating sense of empowerment to see so many young people, especially millennials and Zoomers, out on the streets advocating for equity. That is massively empowering. Benjamin, you mentioned Wendell Berry earlier. He actually has a book on that wound, and that we never, as a society, have addressed that wound of racism, of slavery, right? We hired people to do the jobs that we thought were beneath us. And we continue to see our Black and brown neighbors and family and friends in jobs that are of lower pay and that we think of as lower status. And I think the combination of the atrocities committed by police throughout the nation, not every policeman, of course, but the videos that we've seen come up over the last several years That combined with the sudden identification of service workers, again, traditionally Black and brown folk, lots of immigrants, lots of women, all of a sudden they're essential workers. And all of a sudden, they don't have what they need to do their job safely. So that combination of things has really, I think, hit home for many of us. And I think what we can do here in Assembly District 1 is listen. Number one, there's really not been enough listening, and be good allies. Being a good ally, I struggle with that as a white woman. What does that look like? What can I do? And I think a lot of that is sharing or giving up the stage. So if I have a meeting at work and I'm supposed to be orchestrating it, maybe looking at a way to elevate somebody who otherwise has been in the backstage or hasn't had as strong a voice. I think, you mentioned that there may be folks who don't believe that racism exists or who don't understand unconscious bias or systemic policy-based racism. I think even if you don't believe it's there, behaving in a way that includes people and that affirms each other's humanity is something every single one of us should do. That is incumbent upon being a human being. We need every single one of us, of each other, to make it into the next 50 to 100 years. The pressures of climate change, of cultural crisis, of population growth and migration associated with climate change, all of those things are going to require each and every one of us. And so coming into a knowledge of and understanding of that in our hearts, not just in our mind, I think can really change the way that we individually interact with each other and affirm each other in the space we share. Does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. And thank you. And one of the things you said there that I really like and agree with is, as horrible as these problems are, the most inspiring part has been people from all walks of life and all backgrounds standing up to confront them. Finally,
Yeah.
for the first time, not just the people who have been victims for so long, but everybody else learning kind of how to, how to respect and understand and stand in solidarity together has been a really amazing part. And that's been the reassuring part. That's been the inspiring part that keeps you going and keeps you working on these issues. So thanks. So I'd also like to talk about the other huge issue confronting our country and our district right now, and that's, COVID-19 and the pandemic that's been hitting everybody worldwide. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation, frankly, about public health and about COVID-19 in particular. So as a local leader, as a candidate for office, what would you say to the folks here, to your constituents? What advice can you give them as they try to evaluate this conflicting information, in the absence of larger national leadership? How can people make sense of what they're being told from different sides, whether it's YouTube videos or public officials that they may or may not believe in or trust? How do we figure it out? What's right and what will help protect our communities, our neighbors, our families, and ourselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a lot. God, that's a heavy topic. And one of the things you mentioned is aside from national leadership, and I have to say, the president and vice president's refusal to wear a mask in public is a huge, amongst all the other things, just a huge lack of leadership. It is our responsibility to take care of each other. I mentioned this in our, conversation about Black Lives Matter also. That is our responsibility. And so based on that, which is incumbent upon each of us, as well as the precautionary principle, we make decisions based on limited knowledge every single day. And so it is incumbent upon us also to act based on the most conservative interpretation of the data or the information, which is at this point going out and reopening is a pretty big compromise, given that we have a global pandemic going on and do not have a vaccine, and continue to have inadequate beds for the impact projected later this fall. So if we're going to go out and participate in the economy, the masks that we wear and that we're being asked to wear are not for us, right? We know that as scientists. Those fabric masks don't do anything to protect me against a virus. They protect people I interact with. It is my responsibility to protect my neighbors and friends and the people I do business with. So what I would say is actually really similar to my response to people who don't believe in climate change is, okay, you don't believe it, but what's the right thing to do? Right? The right thing to do is to decrease pollution. The right thing to do is to localize our economies. The right thing to do in COVID-19 is to wear a mask to protect our friends and neighbors. So despite the maybe conflicting information, who cares where the virus came from? Let's protect each other.
So you see there being an element of both kind of collective responsibility to one another, and then also an element of personal responsibility where we have to make sure that we're the ones taking care of each other and pitching in and not leaving it to other people, or you kind of mentioned quibbling about semantics, right?
Yeah,
What's the point when people are getting sick? What can we do to help and stop people from getting sick?
absolutely.
Well, thank you for that. Given all these, huge and nation-shaking events that are going on right now, it has an impact on politics, right? Politics both drives and then changes because of the effects of these things that we go through as a society. And running for office it's difficult in the best of times, and
Yes.
clearly this year is not the best of times.
Yes.
So how has that changed the way your campaign is well, I guess campaigning? How's that changed the way you're campaigning? How does it impact who you're able to talk to, what you're able to talk about? And what are you and your volunteers and your family and neighbors doing to still run a strong campaign in the age of COVID, in the age of protest?
Mhm.
How do we do it properly, responsibly, and effectively in your view? And what have you guys been doing?
Yeah, it definitely has changed things. I don't know if we talked, of course, I ran in the special election last year in 2019, and I don't know if we talked after that, but I put about 15,000 miles on my car in the special election because of our giant district and because of the number of in-person events that are required. Politics requires that of us, right? That is a very personal process. You've got to talk with people and talk through issues and meet new people and see new things. That obviously doesn't happen in the era of COVID-19. So what's been done instead, by and large, is things like this, Zoom-based or online-based conversations, lots of phone calling, some texting. I've been really active on Facebook with my team. So that's been a good way to communicate, and Instagram as well. And so, making sure that we can still get the word out that yes, this campaign is still active, we're still committed. I should add too, it's interesting. Yes, there's a pandemic. Yes, there's a cultural crisis, and there is a recession. And so the elected leaders that are currently in office in the state, by and large, have not gone through a recession in the past. Because of term limits, most of them have not been in place to weather an economic downturn. And so there's a lot of inexperience there in knowing how to deal with financial impacts to things we all care about. Care for the elderly, early childhood education, climate response. Some things very basic, right? Public safety is one of those conversations, which is complicated by the cultural crisis as well as the recession. So there's a lot of things to think about in running the campaign, as well as in thinking through policy positions. But we have, as I mentioned, we have been active. One of the things that I'm missing that I would love help with, so this is a call out to everyone watching. I would love some ideas of how to reach out to people who aren't already in the know. People who I see on Zoom calls, folks who probably will be watching this on YouTube, people who will see my YouTube videos, on my channel, people who look at my Facebook page. Those are folks who already know me, who I hope will be already voting for me in November. To turn this district, though, I need to spread that message. That message is most strongly felt by people who communicate with those they know. So if you're talking with your friends and your family, talk about the election. If you're reaching out to a new organization or wanting to do something on the weekend, participate, volunteer in the election, in the campaign. Making sure that people participate is the most important part of the election coming up. And so I'm thinking through how to get there. And so would appreciate input from those of you out there also.
So as I hear it, the biggest challenge right now is to go out and meet the folks who aren't necessarily heavily political. And
Yes.
we need the help of everybody who supports your campaign to introduce your candidacy to those friends and family of ours who are a little less obsessed with this stuff than maybe you and I and some of our fellow volunteers and activists.
Yes.
But really quickly, while we're on the topic, what's the shout out the Twitter handle, the Facebook handle, all that stuff? How can people find you on social media, and how can they point their friends and neighbors to you?
Yes, I am. Let's see. I don't know. We do have an Instagram page, and I think it's linked on my website. So my website is betancourtforassembly.com. And there you'll find links to Facebook, Facebook is Betancourt for 81. I believe Twitter is, or not Twitter, Instagram is also. We haven't done Twitter. Staffing, cost, all of that. That's a high maintenance platform. So we've not done that. But Instagram and Facebook, absolutely. And of course, the website as well.
All right. Well, hopefully everybody heads out there right after they finish watching this video.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a donate page on that website also.
A very important page. Try and
Yes.
find it, people. All right. Well, speaking of politics, unlike your opponent, politics is not a family business for you. Tell us a little bit about your family, your farm, and your local neighborhood. You live in Shasta, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, we live in a place called Happy Valley here in Shasta County. My husband and I have a small farm, which actually we came to during the last recession. He was unhappy. He's a professional musician by training, and I was working in a job that wasn't fulfilling and all the rest of that. And so we moved up here to Shasta County. His family is up here. In fact, his parents live right around the corner. And his sister lives about 3 miles that way. One of his sisters and his brother and sister are up here also. So it's great to be surrounded by his family, who's very close. And owning a farm is really all encompassing. I mean, it is the classic American dream, but it is a heck of a lot more work than those of us who haven't done it before realize. Up early, up late, no vacations. so yeah, but it's wonderful also. It is everything that I dreamed of when I dressed up for a farmer for Halloween when I was a kid. So yeah, it's wonderful. My dad, I grew up down in Modesto. My mom died a few years ago, but my dad is still in the house that we grew up in. And yeah, I think he and mom before she passed really, they just sparkled when they talked about us and the farm, because I think that certainly they like to see their children happy, but I also think that having a farm is a little bit of a dream for many people, right? It's so idyllic, and they love to come up here. My dad still comes up here. I have 3 siblings, as Pedro does as well. So we have big families to come visit and lots of space for them to run when they're up here. So it's good stuff.
That sounds very familiar. I've got 3 siblings and my mother's a farmer, so
Oh, that's so
Go
cool, Benjamin.
figure. Yep.
Yeah, that's neat.
Well, Elizabeth, it's been really great talking to you. We're going to wrap up pretty soon. Is there anything that you want to cover and get out there for the folks watching this video that we haven't hit yet? Anything, you know, you want to shout out and mention?
Um, we've hit this a couple of times, but I would like to emphasize that folks who are involved in the political process in any way, whether you're making phone calls, whether you're talking with your neighbors at the grocery store, whether you're just liking things or forwarding things on Facebook, every single one of those things has an impact on our campaigns and our ability to spread the word about the importance of representation here in District 1. And I'm talking about my race for Assembly District 1, I'm talking about Pamela Swartz for Senate District 1, and of course Audrey Denny for Congressional District 1. Every single one of your actions has an impact on our region, our communities moving ahead. And we need you. I think we know now more than ever that we are connected in ways that we perhaps could never have imagined, you know, from the COVID-19 crisis to the Black Lives Matter movement. So we need you in all that you are, who you are, exactly the people you know, the skills you have. We absolutely need you on this campaign and on all of our campaigns. So if you can give up your time and energy and resources, we would deeply appreciate that for our district and for our future. So thank you, Benjamin.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned Pamela Swartz and Audrey Denny, because one of the great things this year here in our district, or the overlapping districts that we live in, is to have an incredible slate of, you know, essentially brilliant women running for every level of job in this area. And we're really excited to have you being a part of that fight, a part of that work. So thank you for taking some time this morning to speak with us. And thanks for running to represent all of us here in the 1st District. And, you know, all of us Nevada County Democrats, we can't wait to vote for you. We're excited to be supporting your campaign. So thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. It's so my pleasure. It's nice to talk with you.
You too. You too. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.